When it comes to getting ready to finally launch and plant your church, you likely might try a few preview services. Now, what can happen at preview services is you could get so caught up in your sermon and hoping that goes well that you don't actually take the time to see what it is that you need to improve on when you actually launch. And so in this episode, we're going to give you 5 things to look out for during your preview services.
Welcome back to Practical Church Planting, where in 15 minutes or less, we'll give you practical tips, advice, and encouragement to help you plant and grow healthy churches. My name is Brian Androsian. Joining me today, if you couldn't guess, was Dylan Dodson.
What a guess.
It changes every time, I know. And today we're talking about 5 things to look out for during your preview services.
So we're not talking about like things to prepare for preview services. Yeah. We're saying like the service is here,
you're
getting ready to launch. And you can get so focused on just like trying to preach your sermon and whatever that you're not like actually looking at the benefit of a preview service is not just for you to preach, but it's to see how everything's going.
Yeah. It's not just for people to be able to preview you, but for you to be able to preview what's going to happen.
That's right. And so some of these might be things that you might not be thinking about that you need to be taking consideration on or have other people consider as you're doing it. Here's the first one, the energy in the parking lot and the lobby. And we've talked about this in previous episodes. I feel like it's one of those things that's really overlooked, but also makes a big difference and it is correctable.
Yeah.
I know maybe it's unspiritual to say that because it's like, well, you should just come in and be ready to worship. But we're human beings and like there's just something exciting about momentum and energy. And so if you can help create that, because why does church have to be boring? It doesn't. You should do it. So like for us, and I know it's different if you have your own space or if you're portable, but that's maybe having speakers in your lobby or, even you're in the parking lot. Like, but even though we're not portable, we have our own space. For the longest time, we didn't have speakers that we had outside that are like permanent or whatever. So we use like a Bluetooth speaker and we had it in the parking lot. And if you got a lobby, maybe have it in the lobby as well or have multiple or something like that. But something that doesn't just make it feel dead. Because it can just, especially if this is your church and you're used to it and you're used to being there and you know everybody, it might not feel awkward for you, but if you don't know anybody, it's like it could feel a little weird. And so just look out for what the energy looks like and feels like in the parking lot as people are coming and in the lobby before they get into your auditorium.
We talk a lot about parking lots, don't we? And I've joked, one of my classic jokes, that this should be called the Practical Parking Podcast, I think I said before.
There you go.
It's a good one. But it's important. I mean, that's the first thing anyone sees when they come in. And so if they come in and there's just things that are going to happen sometimes, they're unavoidable. Like you may have someone come in and they're the only one walking in at that time, or like the only one outside other than maybe people volunteering, and it's kind of inherently awkward. And so doing as much as you can to kind of lessen that, so when it's not just the sea of people rushing in, which most of the time is probably not, that it doesn't feel like this really uncomfortable thing. So music out there is like it's a super easy fix, but it really does a whole lot.
Right, and the same thing we've talked about too. Like if you've got a massive lobby, then piping, draping some of it so it's not so big, or making sure that there's like if you have too much space, it could be a bad thing. So whether it's music, keeping people closer together. I mean, you don't want people on top of each other, but it's been one of the benefits for us having currently the space we're in is relatively small and tight. It's helped the energy even when we were a smaller church, because it's not like you had a vast void of space you had to fill. Yeah,
and don't be, especially if like maybe you have a space locked down and you haven't met in there yet, or you're kind of like in that in-between stage, don't be fooled in thinking that a giant, especially if you're portable, I feel like this would happen more if you're portable in a school or movie theater or something, that a big lobby space is like a godsend and nothing but good, which like it is a lot of good, but in the beginning it can really be a big negative. And so pipe and drape can be your friend. I've been to movie theater churches that do pipe and drape like super well, and you don't even notice that it's there. And so like just look out for what's actually there and don't just kind of take for granted that you have so much space.
Yeah, so energy in the parking lot and lobby, and the same could be said if you have a big auditorium. Piping, draping, it'd be good too. Number 2, be looking out for what questions people are asking. So if you hear a lot of, hey, where's the bathroom? Or if you hear a lot of, where do I sit? Or where do I park? Or whatever, you could just think, oh, well, they're new, so they don't know where to go yet. But that's the point. Like you want to be able to create an environment where new people don't feel lost or don't feel welcomed. And so this is part of the benefit of preview services. And if you launch too, you can do these things as well. But is to say, what are they asking? And then how can we help answer those questions more intentionally or help eliminate them altogether?
Yeah, this is one I would prep your people, however many you have, assuming, I'm sure you're going to have some people serving, whoever it is, let them know, like, hey, try and remember the questions that are being asked, because especially if you've been in the space for a little bit, or if they've kind of helped set things up and have been there for a while and are more familiar with it, they're just questions that people have that you've probably forgotten was a question of yours in the beginning, maybe, or they've forgotten. And so just to give them a heads up, like, hey, if someone asks you for where the bathroom is, help them, but I'm going to ask you for that.
Yeah.
And so it helps them kind of keep it in their
And
mind.
we're kind of in that same boat. We're in the process right now looking to move into a larger facility. And so, all that stuff that's got to go with that. But when we move in there, the first couple of weeks is going to be telling our people that are serving, what are people confused about?
Yeah.
What do they don't know, so that we can actually make it a better experience for them.
Yeah, I mean, the space that we're in now, obviously, if you haven't been, we've talked about it a bunch. It's a smaller space. It's insanely easy to find your way around.
Yep.
Like, it just is. But if someone's in a place they're not familiar with,
And they still don't know sometimes.
people don't know, and they feel weird. Like, people don't want to just like wander down a hallway if they don't know if they're supposed to be down there. So our bathrooms are a little bit down the hallway. No matter where you're on the building, they're about 5 steps from you. Like,
Right.
it's super easy to find. But if someone isn't familiar with the space, they don't want to have to go searching. So just all those questions are really good.
Even the auditorium, there's one door pretty much right in the
true.
lobby.
Yeah.
But people that come in a few minutes late, there's been times where they didn't know where to go. And so
Yeah.
having signage or having somebody out there to direct them is a big thing. So what questions are people asking? You want to be thinking about that. Number 3, how many Connect cards are you getting?
Yeah.
And we say this because especially if it's your preview services, you should assume you would
Should get a million.
few,
Right.
at least a couple.
No, yeah.
I mean, maybe a million if you're like Brian, and a million people go to your preview services.
Well,
That
you
can
know.
work too. But the thing is,
Yeah.
like, you're always going to get less than you think.
Yeah.
Like, we get
Yeah.
new people pretty much every weekend, and sometimes it's like a bunch of them fill it out. Not everybody. Some of them like relatively flew. Like this past weekend, like we got like one, and we had more than that. And it was like bummer.
Yeah.
But like, especially in the preview stage when there's new people, you need to ask yourself, did I not communicate this clearly?
Right.
Did I ask awkwardly? Or, and I don't know what episode number it is, but we talk about an effective Connect card. Are you asking for too much information?
Mm-hmm.
So all we ask for is name, email, and phone. Because the less things you ask for, the more likely to fill it out.
Yep.
We don't ask for address, even though sometimes it stinks because we would like to have that, and we can follow up later. But if they're brand new, we don't have it because it's just a 4th line, and you're asking too many things. So you could be asking too many things. You could have just assumed people will fill it out, and you don't announce it from stage, like during your next steps or announcements. Like, you got to remind people, like encourage them. Don't make them feel guilty. But if you get no Connect cards or very few, just be like, okay, how could we explain this better so that new people might actually fill them out?
Yeah, this is the day where I was joking, obviously, with a million, but this is the day where you should be getting more than most other days.
Right.
And so if you're not, then really need to take a look at kind of your process of how you're saying it. And hey, this might be the first time you're saying it. And so
Right.
maybe it is awkward. Like,
Yep.
that's fine. But it's just figuring those little things out. I think things that you kind of need to iron out in the beginning.
And just a side note tip, because we're all about practical church planning here.
I've heard that, yes.
We recently, a few months ago, I don't know why we didn't start this sooner. We stopped saying if it's your first time,
Yeah.
and we say if you're new, because a lot of people will not fill it out on their very first time, and so, but they probably will on their second, third, or fourth because they kind of like it. But if they kind of hear you have to do it on your first time, they never fill it out. And so, just say, hey, if you're new, which you can make a joke because it. Preview services
all
or
are
launch
new.
Sunday. Everybody's new.
That's right.
So how many Connect cards? If it's less than you might want, maybe there's some way you can tweak it.
Yep.
Number 4, this one's really important, is parents' feedback on kid space. So you might think it's great and there's no problems, but again, that's probably because you know everybody.
Yeah.
And so you're comfortable and you feel, and your kids know all the other kids. Like, there's nothing awkward. If you're brand new in a brand new space, you don't know anything. And so maybe tell the people that are serving back there, or to maybe even to proactively ask your own people, hey, it's our first time here, the first 2 times in this place. What do you think? Is it clean? Do they feel safe dropping their kids off? Is it confusing how to find the kids area? What questions are they asking? Get parents' feedback, so that, because this is a big thing if you want families to come back.
Yeah.
Especially if they're new to church or they have never been before. It's just, for us, if you've been a part of it for a while, you're like, oh, I dropped my kids off, no big deal. But if you haven't been, it's a weird concept.
Yeah.
I'm at church, and what am I supposed to do? So
That's true, and especially if you're starting the church, you probably know what the alternatives would have been with like your other spaces. So to you, it might seem like awesome. Like for us, we talked about before, we had kids in a space here in our facility, and then we moved them we run a Taekwondo studio that's in our same, or in the building next to us. So to us, it's like we knew what it was previously, we know what it is now. So we know that this is awesome. We know this is a huge upgrade. Someone coming for the first time, they might not have the point of comparison, and so they might see just the negatives and see like, well, there's all these other issues that we
walking
kind
to
of
another building.
Yeah, and we're kind of exactly. It's in a different building, things like that we kind of gloss over because we know it's way better than it was. And so, just things to have it's kind of another thing. Have your volunteers, the ones serving with kids, pay attention to like our parents asking like, hey, why is this door open, or why are these things happening, and kind of look at all those different things.
Yep. And it's good too, because A, you might be able to explain some of those reasonings better, and B, again, just to make it safe and clean, having people whose eyes on it for the first time, asking for parents' feedback is a really important thing.
Yep.
And then fifthly, the last thing to look out for during preview services, and this might seem kind of obvious, but I'll explain. It's where do people sit? Because you'll notice, I mean, we would like everyone to sit together because that's where energy is created, but people don't do that. They sit in the back, they sit as far away. That's just what our culture is. It's not knocking, it's just what it is. And so take note of that. And if you don't like how it feels, there's more that you can do than you think you can.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked about in previous episodes about dropping chairs. Maybe you're in a space where you can't do that. So maybe use pipe and drape. Maybe you can use rope. My kind of ranking is drop chairs and then pipe and drape and then rope. Because rope just kind of seems like, if you're new, you would wonder, why can't I sit there? But the other alternative too is having people actually guide people where to sit, which I know it feels weird. It kind of feels like people say what's the point of having a parking lot people serving if they know where to park? Well, it's not about telling them where to park. It's about welcoming them in and let them know, hey, you're in the right spot. It's the same thing with the auditorium. If you want people to sit together, you can guide them and lead them to kind of sit closer to. They will if you tell them.
Totally will.
And so the energy in the service is a big thing too. And so, where do they sit? And if it felt awkward or felt weird, be thinking, okay, how can we kind of get people closer together if you're in a space that's bigger than the amount of people you have?
Yeah, I would say, gosh, be prepared to seat people regardless of where you are. I think that's the best way to do it, especially if it's a preview service. People are coming for the first time. They don't know the space. I would get a couple volunteers and have them. And this you may be thinking man, I'm expecting 50 people to show up, and our place seats 300 because it's a school auditorium. People can figure it out, but people are going to spread out. And it's the same thing with the lobby. A big space can be great when you grow, but it can be a big deterrent in the beginning. And so seating people together, even if it's a big space, we were talking about this morning. I've been in churches where they have big auditoriums. They're large, kind of, bigger auditoriums, but it was a smaller group, but everyone sat together and it didn't feel anything wrong.
Right.
And so seating people together, having a volunteer or two that are taking people to their seats, man, especially in a preview service. I feel like in a preview service, you almost expect it because you're new there. Everyone's new. But it's really it's going to help with the energy there. But if you don't do that, pay attention to where people are sitting and how spread out they are, because it's going to tell you how Sunday, number one Sunday is going to be and how every week's going to be.
Yeah, and again, it just matters, and I just feel like sometimes people think, well, there's nothing I can do about it, and there is.
Totally
just ask people and guide people. That'll be helpful, because again, it can be easy for you just to focus on your sermon, hoping that goes well. But the point of preview services is to kind of get a good feel of what's going on. And so again, the 5 things we talked about: energy in the parking lot and the lobby. See what questions people are asking, what they're confused about. How many Connect cards did you get? What do you need to tweak there? Get the parents' feedback on KidSpace and figure out where people are sitting and see how you might be able to arrange that better in the future.
And what's another thing you can do with preview service?
What's another thing?
If you have a preview service coming up, join our Practical Church Planning group on Facebook and tell people, because we'll pray for you and we'll encourage you and we'll ask you tips. And we'll give you tips. Ask how it went.
You
join
the community. People smarter than us.
That's right. Everyone there is smarter than us. We just post things. Who knows?
Practical Church Planning Facebook group, and you can subscribe if you haven't already.
Totally.
Twice a week, 15 minutes or less. Thanks for being with us. We'll be with you next time on Practical Church Planning.
Thanks so much for watching this episode of Practical Church Planning. Whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or Practical Planning, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, make sure you like or subscribe or do whatever it's telling you to do or should do on that platform.
And hey, if you are so tired of looking at our ugly faces, but you're not tired of listening to our beautiful voices, then you can find our podcast if you just search Practical Church Planning on iTunes or Google Play. Make sure not to just find it, not just to listen, but to subscribe.
Make sure you subscribe. Brian, tell them to subscribe.
Subscribe.
See you next time.